The no self or non self is a concept that's very easy to misunderstand or misinterpret. So let's take some time today to talk about non self. Non self is one of the three marks of existence. This is where the concept is most commonly talked about. In Buddhism, there are many numbered things, like the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, Noble Path, and things like that. But where the concept of no self comes from is the three marks of existence. A little bit of Buddhist theory for you. These are all basically saying the same thing, but just in a little different tone or like different definitions, so that you have alternative views in case one description doesn't make that much sense to you. You have other entryways into finding the Dharma or the truth. So the three marks of existence says, in existence, there are three things that are inherent. Number one, impermanence. Nothing is permanent. Number two, no self. There's nothing to call anything. And number three, suffering. So this gets commonly misunderstood as, oh, Buddhism is a very pessimistic kind of a religion where, the existence, the mark of existence is suffering. And that's why people think commonly Buddhism defines life, existence is suffering. But it's actually kind of like the complete opposite of the actual point the three marks of existence are saying. So let's walk through it one by one in terms of the concepts and some theory, and then we can apply it to your practical life. So going into the theory, understanding the impermanence is sort of easy. Now, there are a lot of things that seems like it would last forever, but it doesn't. So everything that composes this shirt came from something else. But then it is temporarily forming this bond to become my shirt. But guess what? In 100 years or so, this shirt is all gonna be decomposed. And since I wore it today, parts of the shirt have already gone out. It already is back into the world and then forming dust and then recombining into something else. So I had tofu for dinner. It used to be tofu, but now it's my food that's being digested inside of it. It used to be a tofu, but before tofu, it used to be soybean. But before soybean, it used to be something else that the plant ate. It used to be sunshine, oxygen, and water, and the nutrients. So just like this, impermanence is a little bit easier to understand because you can actually see a lot of the things that change. And some things definitely seem like they don't change, but that's because we are looking at it in terms of our perceived span of time. So, for example, the Earth seems pretty constant, but the thing is, if we look at the entire history of the world and the Earth, thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands years old, Earth isn't all that static either. Now, something important to keep in mind additionally is in the physical world, nothing is permanent. And in biology, which sits on top of physics, things are always changing. So that's why you have cell division, mitosis, meiosis, and such. But without the physical realm, without the rules of physical phenomena binding everything together into this gravity and into this atmospheric pressure and the existence of water and everything. So without the physical conditions for life, life cannot exist. So biology sits on top of physics. And now, on top of this, you have the mind. Because you can't have the mind without a sufficiently developed biology system. So this means impermanence applies to all three. If rocks and sand and waves and water, if that's impermanent, so are cells and living matter. But if those are always changing, that also means things inside of your mind, the constructs that you have, your thoughts, your feelings, your internal definitions of something, how you look at somebody and the feeling that arises from it, the pleasure that comes from something good, the sadness that comes from experiencing something bad, that is all also impermanent. Because why? It sits on top of biology. So at best, it's going to last until you die, right? So that's impermanence. Easy to understand. But non-self, what do we really mean by that? People usually think it has to do with the lack of an eternal, everlasting soul. So if you are in the belief of reincarnation, this physical body may die, but then in the next life, my soul is going to be retained, and it just occupies a different body. So therefore, the number of the souls that I inhibit, my soul, that's sort of permanent, and there's some definition to it. There's some core essence to it, and it keeps on revolving around. So that could be true. Who cares? Not who cares. Who knows? Because what happens after we die? Like the spirit? I don't know. But Buddhism largely deals with the observable, realistic truth, right? And so, non-self is more the truthful and the reality-based definition of non-self is this. This is a pen, right? But what if I don't use this to write? Then does it function as a pen? What if I use this to just exclusively scratch my head? Then it's less of a pen, but more of a head scratcher. What if somebody comes into me and tries to attack me and then I use this as a weapon? Then in that case, this isn't really a pen, it's a weapon. What if I use two of these to eat food, like a chopstick? Then this ceases to become a pen, but it's more like a chopstick. So, it's so easy to think this is a pen. But where's the penness in this pen? What is the penness that defines it? So, if we take this part away, and we just have this retains some of that penness, right? Then how come it's still a pen when we put it together? And how come it's still a pen when it's, destructed? Maybe it's because this is a pen. But at the same time, this isn't the only pen that's around, right? So what is the penness inside of this? And, in the olden days, people used to use a, feather and then dip it in ink and then use that to write, right? So looking at that and this, what's the penness? Wow, it keeps on saying penis. Anyway, penness and anything is basically defined by context. If I use this as a pen, then it becomes a pen. If I use this as a chopstick, then it becomes a chopstick. If I use this as a t-shirt, then it becomes a t-shirt. But if I spill something and I only have this to wipe with it, and then I, wipe the floor with this, then it just becomes a cleaning cloth. I am a son. But when I'm with my wife, I'm a husband. But when I'm with my teacher, I'm a student. But when I am in front of you guys, I'm a YouTuber. So, what am I? When all of these labels that I have on me are temporary labels that are contextual. So, without any context, what am I? Just like how there is no inherent quality of pen inside of this. But the pen only exists in context. That is what makes it a pen. Therefore, I am something because of a quality that is ascribed by context. Without context, nothing has any inherentness of anything. So these are glasses, but it's glasses because I wear them like this. But what if I use them as something else? Then this ceases to be a glass. What if I give this to a civilization and a person who has never experienced eyeglasses before? Then they would use it in a completely different way. So just like this, any quality that anything has is ascribed to it because of a temporary context. And it is a certain combination of those contexts that gives something a quality. And that binding of contexts change over time because of impermanence. So this is the ever-changing nature of reality. Nothing by itself has any quality, and everything changes over time. The physical composition of my body changes over time because I eat. Some food gets absorbed into my body and forms something. My cells divide. Some food becomes poop, goes back into the world. Some water that I drink becomes my plasma. Some water that I drink becomes pee. Just like this. Context keeps on changing. But it's pee if I look at it from the toilet's perspective. But then if I use it in the farm, then it's a fertilizer. In a medical setting, it's a sample. So again, pee has penis. Wow. Everything sounds like penis. But pee has the quality of pee in the context of a restroom. And just like this, same applies to things that are inside of your mind. I have negative thoughts. But no thoughts are inherently negative. A thought becomes negative when there's something to compare it with. My outlook on myself is pessimistic. But again, there's nothing that's inherently pessimistic. This means something, some arbitrary or unconscious standard that I have against myself makes it pessimistic. And that is how non-self works. So it's less about exclusively the human identity. It is more about the condition of reality and the phenomenon of reality and existence itself. It's much bigger than one human individual's, discussion. This one human individual is a just tiny subset of the entire concept of no self. And suffering is if you do not understand impermanence and no self. You suffer because you are ultimately believing that there is a permanent and inherent reason to suffer. Now, let's go into your practical life. When you are a high school student, it seems like your high school grades matter so much. It seems like what college you go to matters so much. When your parents argue and suppose they get a divorce, it seems like it would be the end of the world. When you get something that you want, like a dream job, it seems like that happiness would last forever. When something bad happens to you, when you are suffering from grief, it seems like that grief will last forever. But over time, we see that in reality, nothing really stays. But we have different attachments to such experiences, possessions, and things like that. And now, when we think our high school and college matters, going back to our previous definition, it seems like a permanent thing. What high school we go to, what college we go to, what we got on our SATs, it seems like these are very permanent things. Who we hurt, and who we broke up with, and who we are no longer friends with, who we are friends with, who we met. These things, at the time, it seems like it will matter forever. Moreover, when I get an F, when I don't get into the college of my choice, when someone dumps me, when my parents, get divorced, it feels like they are 100% absolutely bad things. Or when you get a good job, when you get the things that you want, it seems like it's 100% a good thing. There is an inherent goodness to something. There's an inherent badness to something. That's our belief system. But over time, we see that once you hit your 30s, nobody really talks about college nor SAT scores. In fact, I would even argue once you get to college, nobody really talks about your SAT scores. By the time you get married, by the time you have kids, doesn't really matter who you met before then. By the time your parents get old, it doesn't really matter that they had a divorce or whether they're still happy in their marriage. It doesn't seem to make it doesn't seem like it is as important and as critical and impactful as it was once in your lifetime. Moreover, we also learned that, hey, I thought getting fired was like the worst thing that could happen to my life. But turns out there were some pretty nice things about it. Turns out, when I had kids, I thought it was going to be all great, but then, man, turns out kids are kind of like nightmares. Sometimes you get a promotion, you think like, oh man, this is a great thing, but then it comes with a lot of downsides as well. So just like this, whatever you are experiencing, if we look at it from a truthful lens, it's not really going to last, nor is it unilaterally good or bad. Even this fact, you can apply the 3 marks of existence with. So, you may think, man, that's a depressing outlook on life, right? Nothing means anything. So you are already falling into the trap of thinking there is something inherently depressing. What you're not seeing is maybe depressing is contextual. And moreover, this thing called depressing is inherently existing in something. So this is exactly where you are again mistaken by your own ignorance. Not calling you stupid, it's just that you simply don't know. Your mind does not know. It can't fathom that possibility. So, when something is so good, right? You go to the poker table in Vegas, and oh my god, I just won $100, and I must be on some hot streak today. Let me gamble my life savings. That would be a pretty silly kind of a decision-making process, right? But why we make that kind of decision is we think there is this inherent good luck. If I've been losing thousands of dollars and then I win $100 on a poker table, relatively speaking, it still fucking sucks, right? It's the same $100 winning, but it's contextual. But we can turn it around and be like, you know what? Let this be a lesson. I'm gonna walk away from the gambling table. And now, that $100 you won can be a great life lesson. Never set foot in front of a gambling table again. And it's a pretty nice lesson to learn for $100, right? Much better than not knowing. So this kind of a thought line of understanding the three marks of existence saves you from future suffering, because you don't cling on to things that feel good. But also, it relieves you from your present suffering, because, oh, this bad experience, it's not really going to last. This too shall pass, and moreover, if that's assuming this is an inherently bad thing. Assuming this is a bad thing, this will pass, but at the same time, this thing isn't even unilaterally bad. It just looks bad because of the contextualization that I do in my brain. So, depending on how you look at things, i.e., context, anything can be anything. So, I personally believe this understanding the three marks of existence is not depressing. It actually gets you to connect to how powerful you are in your domain. And in this, using this omniscient power, instead of using it for your own benefit, you are using it to torture yourself, thinking that your life is depressing. And I think that is a really, really, really big shame. So, regardless of what good thing you are experiencing, and therefore you feel like your life is on the high rise and everything, detaching from it will save you from future suffering. Because why? You're gonna get used to this and it won't feel good anymore. So in pursuit of another better thing, you're gonna do more and more and more, and then you can't continuously go up. You're bound to go down sometimes. And now, because you're standardized, you're used to this level of goodness, you're gonna feel really fucking horrible in the future. So when you're feeling too high, it normalizes you. When you're feeling too bad, it brings you up to this state of ease and lack of suffering. That is Buddhist happiness. Lack of suffering. Not just because you're not experiencing something bad right now. No. You cannot be experiencing something bad right now, but be sitting on top of a ticking time bomb. That's not complete freedom from suffering. Complete freedom from suffering means you have freed yourself from past suffering, present suffering, and future suffering. And you can only do that if you understand the mechanism of suffering, which is really well explained by the three marks of existence. So that is my long lecture on the three marks of existence today. If you like this content, please subscribe for more. If you have any questions, because I know this is a fairly complex topic, you can leave them in the comments below. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next video.